Can a $10 plastic watering can legitimately replace a $2,000 dumbbell rack?
Oh, that is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Right. I mean, think about the modern gym for a second. It usually has this very specific, almost clinical aesthetic. You've got the rubberized floors, the rows of mathematically engineered iron.
Yeah, the knurled steel bars that are just, designed to perfectly isolate your muscles.
Exactly. It's an environment built entirely on biomechanical control.
It,
Total, absolute precision.
it is a completely manufactured landscape. I mean, every piece of equipment in a commercial facility is optimized to work seamlessly with human anatomy.
It's predictable.
Highly predictable. It's sterile in a functional sense, and it exists in this vacuum that's entirely separated from the messy physical reality of your actual daily life.
But then you leave that optimized environment, right? You
Yeah.
step back into your house, and suddenly you aren't lifting a perfectly balanced, calibrated plate.
No, you're trying to wrestle a massive, awkward sack of dog food up a narrow flight of stairs.
Exactly. Or you're trying to figure out if there's some kind of shortcut to getting your daily exercise in while miraculously crossing off your weekend chore list at the same time.
Which is the dream.
We have all tried to find that holy grail, that ultimate multitasking hack where you finish the day with, a clean house, a manicured garden, and a genuine physical training stimulus.
The appeal of that fusion is incredibly strong because if you can combine the physical exertion of just maintaining your life with the deliberate adaptation of a workout,
You reclaim hours of your week.
you really do. But the challenge, of course, is that the chaotic nature of household chores rarely maps neatly onto the structured demands of exercise science.
And that collision between structure and chaos is exactly what we are exploring today.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are diving into a really compelling source today. It's a July 2026 blog post by a writer named Ang.
Such a great post.
It really is. And it's titled, Notes on Exercises, Part 19. Can I use watering can for the farmer's walk?
Which immediately sets the tone. Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to look closely at Ang's personal experiment. We're looking at this attempt to merge a staple, full-body strength movement with the mundane chore of watering the garden.
It's a fascinating intersection.
It really is. We are going to look at the theory driving this idea, the surprising utility of the equipment Ang chose, and, well, the harsh biomechanical reality of what happens when fitness theory goes up against a plastic jug.
Because taking a movement out of the controlled laboratory of the gym, and forcing it into the dirt of the backyard introduces a whole cascade of variables.
Oh, absolutely.
It becomes this fascinating case study in what we call functional fitness. And it makes you wonder whether our definition of that term is actually entirely backwards.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we even get to the specific gardening tool, we really need to establish the foundation of Ang's experiment.
The movement itself.
Right. According to the post, Ang has decided to integrate the farmer's walk into their daily routine. And the source specifically highlights that the farmer's walk is known as a comprehensive, full-body workout.
Which is completely accurate.
Now, the actual mechanics of the movement sound almost deceptively simple. You literally just pick up heavy weights in both hands and you walk a specific distance.
Right, but think about the universal human experience of hauling groceries.
Oh, man. You know that primal, stubborn urge to just refuse to make 2 trips from the car to the kitchen?
The classic threshold challenge. You'd rather risk structural damage to your spine than walk back down the driveway for the paper towels.
Yes, you've got thin plastic bags cutting off the circulation to your fingers, you're speed walking up the driveway, your traps are burning.
And your core is absolutely locked down so you don't tip over when you step up onto the porch.
That is a real-world farmer's walk right there. You're moving a heavy bilateral load over a distance. But to elevate it from just, carrying stuff to a recognized full-body workout, there's a lot happening under the hood.
An immense amount of neuromuscular recruitment is required just to keep you upright.
Walk us through that a bit.
Well, when you pick up a heavy load in each hand, gravity is applying downward force, right? It's actively attempting to pull your shoulders out of their sockets and collapse your thoracic spine forward.
Which is not ideal.
Definitely not. So to counter that, your trapezius muscles and your rhomboids in your upper back, they have to engage in a maximal isometric hold just to keep your shoulder girdle stable.
So your back is working overtime before you even take a single step.
long before.
Yeah.
And then that demand travels down the kinetic chain. Your core, which, by the way, isn't just your abs, but your obliques and the erector spinae muscles running up your back.
Right, the whole trunk.
Exactly. It has to create this rigid, pressurized cylinder. If that cylinder buckles, your torso snaps forward under the weight.
Wow.
Finally, your glutes, quadriceps, and calves are forced into action to generate locomotion while supporting an entirely new, much heavier center of mass. It's essentially a moving, dynamic plank under extreme load.
Which makes Eng's underlying premise so compelling to me. I mean, Eng writes about actively contemplating how to weave this highly effective compound movement into daily chores, specifically while out in the garden.
It's a great concept.
It really taps into something interesting from a behavioral psychology standpoint, too. It is a textbook application of habit stacking.
It is a brilliant strategy for behavioral change because, often a new fitness routine fails because it requires carving out an entirely new, dedicated block of time.
Right, you got to drive to the gym, change clothes.
Workout, shower, that introduces a massive amount of behavioral friction. Habit stacking bypasses that friction entirely.
By anchoring it to something you're already doing anyway.
Precisely. You take a mandatory, existing behavior like watering the tomato plants and anchor a new desired behavior to it. The time is already allocated.
The physical environment is already established.
Exactly. By deliberately transforming the act of carrying the water into a focused farmer's walk, Eng is extracting a physical adaptation from time that was already spent.
So you get the metabolic and muscular benefits of the workout without paying the willpower tax of going to the gym.
Which is huge.
But obviously, dragging a pair of cast iron kettlebells through the mud to water your petunias kind of defeats the entire purpose of the chore. You need a tool that actually waters the plants.
Right. You need functional utility first and training utility second.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Eng decides the most practical way to execute this habit stacking experiment is to just use a standard plastic watering can.
Just a normal gardening jug.
Yeah, and the blog post lays out some very specific specs for this setup. The watering can holds around 10 liters of water.
Which is perfect for the math.
Exactly, because 1 liter of water weighs precisely 1 kilogram. So a fully loaded watering can equates to roughly 10 kilograms.
Or about 22 pounds.
Right. But the truly clever detail, Eng points out, is that this everyday plastic jug has volumetric measurement marks embossed on the side.
And those simple lines completely recontextualize the object.
It turns a static gardening tool into an infinitely fractional weight system. Eng notes in the post, I can adjust the weight by changing the water level to suit my training intensity.
It's so smart.
You just use the garden hose to dial in the exact resistance you need for the day. It is an analog, water-powered, adjustable dumbbell.
And that elegantly solves one of the most critical requirements of exercise science, which is progressive overload.
Right, the idea that you have to keep challenging the hustle.
Exactly. For a tissue to grow stronger, it has to be continually subjected to a stimulus slightly greater than what it has already adapted to. If a muscle fiber's current capacity is X, and you consistently train at X,
You just plateau.
the biological imperative to build more muscle simply ceases. You have to train at X plus 1. In a commercial setting, this requires moving down a massive rack of increasingly heavy iron weights.
And usually, those increments are locked in, right? A dumbbell rack usually jumps in 5-pound increments.
Which can be a huge leap.
It really is. If 20 pounds is too light, but 25 pounds compromises your form, you're stuck in this really awkward training purgatory.
But fluid volume allows for micro-loading. Eng can fill the watering can to 5 liters on week 1. That's a 5-kilogram load. As their grip strength improves and the core adapts, Eng doesn't need to buy a heavier piece of equipment.
They just fill it to 5.5 liters.
Exactly. Then 6 liters. Then 7, all the way up to the 10-liter maximum capacity. The granular progression that you can achieve just by turning a tap on for an extra half second perfectly mimics the most sophisticated strength training protocols.
It really makes you wonder why we overcomplicate things so much. I mean, you read this and immediately think about canceling your gym membership to just haul buckets of water around the yard.
It sounds like a frictionless, zero-cost fitness hack.
It does.
And on paper, the mathematics of the load and the biological response line up perfectly. The body doesn't know if it is lifting iron or water. It only knows resistance.
Right, on paper. Yeah. But the post quickly pivots to reality, and Eng hits a wall of conflicting internet research.
Ah, yes, the forums.
Despite the brilliant micro-loading capability, Eng discovers that fitness forums and experts generally agree that a watering can is actually a terrible tool for the farmer's walk.
They are not fans.
Not at all. The post outlines 3 specific major drawbacks to the setup: an unstable load, poor ergonomics, and a weak grip.
Because eventually, the elegant theory of fluid resistance has to contend with the blunt reality of material physics and human biomechanics.
So what does this all mean? Because I actually have to push back on that first drawback. Let's talk about the unstable load.
Okay, let's hear it.
When you're carrying a watering can, the water isn't a solid block of weight, right? It's sloshing back and forth, crashing against the sides of the plastic as you walk over the grass.
Definitely.
But wait, wouldn't that constant shifting actually force your body to work exponentially harder to stabilize? If the 10 kilograms of resistance is constantly moving, your core and your stabilizer muscles would have to fire in totally unpredictable ways to keep your spine neutral.
That's a fair point.
I mean, I see athletes paying premium prices for specialized water-filled training bags just to get that exact effect. So why is an unstable load suddenly a drawback here?
What's fascinating here is that the underlying principle of your argument is sound, but the application ignores the structural container housing the water.
Okay, how so?
Well, yes, instability is a highly effective training variable. When an athlete uses a sandbag or an aqua bag, they are intentionally recruiting deep stabilizer muscles. But those specialized tools are designed to be gripped securely.
Ah,
They're often hugged tightly against the body's center of mass, allowing the major muscle groups of the torso to absorb those unpredictable shifts in weight.
so the load is unstable, but the connection to the body is incredibly secure.
Precisely. A watering can offers the exact opposite scenario, which brings us to the second and third drawbacks Ang found in the research: poor ergonomics and a weak grip.
They kind of go hand in hand.
They really do. To understand why this fails, look at the anatomy of a purpose-built heavy implement. A kettlebell handle is forged from metal. A heavy dumbbell has deep knurling.
That rough diamond pattern texture milled into the steel, right?
Yes, exactly. When you grip it, that knurling literally bites into the skin of your palm, creating a massive coefficient of friction. Your hand physically locks onto the weight, allowing the force to transfer efficiently up your arm, through your shoulder, and into your back and core.
The grip basically becomes a non-issue, so the target muscles can actually do the work.
Furthermore, the center of mass on a dumbbell is situated directly in the middle of your closed fist. The weight is perfectly symmetrically distributed. Now, apply those biomechanical standards to a cheap plastic watering can.
Well, it's just smooth, molded plastic. There's zero friction.
Zero. And because it's smooth plastic, your forearm flexors have to generate a maximal isometric contraction just to prevent the handle from sliding out of your fingers.
You're just constantly fighting the material's lack of grip.
Exactly. This leads to a severe bottleneck in the kinetic chain. Your forearms and your grip will completely fatigue and fail long before the large, powerful muscles of your upper back and core even register a training stimulus.
So you aren't getting a full-body workout. You're just giving yourself extreme hand cramps.
Essentially, yes. Your grip taps out while your lats are still waiting for the workout to start, and then you have the shape of the can itself.
Right, the spout.
That is the core of the poor ergonomics. A watering can is designed to project water outward, away from the user. Therefore, the center of mass is typically pushed forward, toward the spout, away from the handle.
Right.
In physics, this creates a longer moment arm. When you pick up that 10-kilogram can, the weight isn't resting evenly in your hand. It is actively levering forward, applying rotational torque to your wrist joint.
Now that makes sense. You aren't just holding the weight up. You're constantly fighting to keep the spout from tipping toward the ground.
Now combine all three drawbacks simultaneously. You have 10 kilograms of water violently sloshing forward and backward, creating chaotic kinetic energy. That energy crashes against the rigid plastic walls of the can.
Which is already pulling forward.
Right. Because the center of mass is already levered forward, those shock waves send unpredictable, violent torque directly into your wrist. And you are trying to manage all of this structural chaos while desperately squeezing a slippery, frictionless plastic handle that is actively trying to slide out of your sweating hand.
That sounds less like a workout and more like a recipe for a torn wrist ligament. I mean, the joint is taking all the punishment that the muscles are supposed to be absorbing.
It really is.
It really paints a stark picture of the difference between an object engineered to safely load the human musculoskeletal system and an object engineered purely to transport and pour liquid.
It is the point where the cleverness of habit stacking collides with the limitations of industrial design. A watering can is a brilliant vessel for gardening, but it is a biomechanical nightmare for heavy strength training.
Given that overwhelming consensus that a watering can is structurally, ergonomically, and functionally the wrong tool for a farmer's walk, you would assume the experiment ends right there.
Most people would stop.
Right. The logical next step is to abandon the watering can, admit the internet is right, and either buy a kettlebell or just accept that watering the plants is a chore, not a workout. But that brings us to the conclusion of Ang's post, which is undeniably the best part of this whole deep dive.
I completely agree. Ang's final verdict reveals a very specific, very valuable mindset.
It does. Because after thoroughly documenting the irrefutable evidence against using the watering can, the instability, the terrible ergonomics, the weak grip Ang doesn't fold,
Not at all.
the post ends with this brilliant sign-off. Ang writes, and I'll see how this goes in the coming weeks to determine if I can adapt it somehow. Till the next post.
That single sentence holds a masterclass in practical experimentation.
It really does. It perfectly captures the essence of taking theoretical knowledge and stress testing it in reality. Ang understands the concept of the farmer's walk, recognizes the value of habit stacking, and acknowledges the internet's warnings about the biomechanical flaws.
But rather than being paralyzed by the pursuit of optimal conditions, Ang chooses to run the experiment anyway.
Yeah.
The goal isn't necessarily to achieve textbook physical perfection. The goal is adaptation. Ang is willing to take the awkward plastic jug out into the dirt for a few weeks to see what actually happens.
Maybe they figure out a modified grip. Maybe the walking pace changes to mitigate the sloshing.
The mechanism of discovery is simply the willingness to try, even when the internet says it isn't ideal. It is the scientific method stripped of its pretension and applied to the messy reality of personal fitness.
I love that.
You formulate a hypothesis, you execute the experiment in a real-world environment, you observe the physical feedback, and then you adapt your methodology.
It is infinitely more productive than sitting on the couch endlessly optimizing a spreadsheet for a workout you will never actually do simply because you don't own the mathematically perfect equipment.
Yet, analyzing Ang's stubborn commitment to this flawed piece of plastic raises an incredibly important question.
Okay, what's that?
Well, we spent a significant amount of time detailing exactly why the perfectly balanced, aggressively knurled, geometrically symmetrical metal grips of modern gym equipment are functionally superior and safer than a sloshing, poorly designed plastic jug.
We definitively proved the watering can has terrible ergonomics, yeah.
But step outside the gym for a moment and look at the physical demands of actual human existence.
Okay.
When you are helping a friend navigate a ratty, asymmetrical sofa down a narrow, twisting staircase, is that load perfectly balanced?
Definitely not.
When you're hoisting a wet, shifting 40-pound bag of mulch out of the trunk of a sedan, or wrestling a squirming, uncooperative toddler into a car seat, or sprinting through the rain with an overstuffed, tearing paper grocery bag.
Well, there is zero knurling on a squirming toddler, I can tell you that. And the center of mass is entirely unpredictable.
Exactly. Real life is fundamentally unstable. The physical world is inherently ergonomically awkward. It demands chaotic, heavy lifting, often with compromised grips and terrible leverage.
That's so true.
So the provocative thought you have to consider after dissecting Ang's experiment is this. If our daily lives constantly require us to manage shifting loads with weak grips and poor ergonomics, might training exclusively with perfectly balanced, mathematically optimized gym weights actually leave us entirely unprepared for the reality of the physical world?
Wow. That completely flips the script on what constitutes a good workout.
Is it possible there is a hidden, profound value in the sheer awkwardness of Ang's 10-liter watering can? A value that the perfectly curated, sterile gym environment has completely engineered out of our modern fitness culture?
It forces you to reevaluate the difference between having highly specialized gym strength and having everyday, chaotic chore strength. We all started out looking for a simple shortcut to merge fitness with our household to-do lists.
But Ang's persistence might be pointing to something much deeper.
The watering can is never going to give you the perfect, biomechanically optimal farmer's walk. But by forcing you to grapple with shifting water, poor leverage, and a slippery handle, it might just be the exact chaotic stimulus your body needs to prepare for the messy, unergonomic reality of actual life.
And that willingness to embrace the awkwardness might be the most effective fitness hack of all.
I think you're absolutely right. Until next time, keep experimenting, keep adapting, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.